Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're exploring something quite interesting. Two major roles Marilyn Monroe was seriously considered for, but, well, never got to play.
That's right. We're talking Holly Golightly in Breakfast at Tiffany's, and perhaps more surprisingly, The Bride in a potential Bride of Frankenstein remake.
Two iconic characters. And the sources suggest studio intervention was the key reason she missed out. So our mission today is to dig into why these didn't happen and what it tells us about, the era and Marilyn's image.
Definitely. Let's start with Breakfast at Tiffany's. The hook here is Truman Capote. He wrote the book, obviously.
And he didn't just suggest Marilyn for Holly Golightly. He apparently demanded her.
Well, demanded might be strong, but he was incredibly passionate about it. He truly believed only Marilyn could capture the character he'd written. He saw her as Holly.
And Marilyn's reaction to this, because, that's huge pressure, but also a massive compliment.
Totally. And incredibly, she apparently agreed to take the role before she'd even read a script, just based on Capote's insistence.
Just based on him saying, "You're perfect for it."
Yeah. We have that quote from her. It's quite revealing. "I took the role because Truman was so insistent."
When someone says you'd be perfect for the role and only you can play it, well, an actress listens.
If he was that insistent about it, I figured it must be true, so I took it. Think about that trust.
What girl is going to turn down the perfect role? That really sums it up. Capote must have been thrilled.
Oh, he was deeply touched by her faith in him. It seemed like a done deal, artistically speaking.
It wasn't. The studio, Paramount, right, they had other ideas.
Exactly. Despite Capote's strong preference, despite Marilyn's initial agreement, the studio machine had its own priorities. And Marilyn Monroe wasn't their vision for Holly Golightly.
Which is fascinating, considering who eventually played her. But let's pivot to the other role, which feels even more unexpected.
The Bride of Frankenstein.
In the 50s. I know they're bringing back some classic monsters then.
That's the context. The Wolfman, Dracula, the Mummy. They were all getting another look. Universal, likely, was considering reviving its horror icons.
And Bride of Frankenstein was on the table. Was James Whale involved? Or just the concept?
The sources focus more on the concept and casting. There was even talk, apparently, of trying to get Boris Karloff back as the monster.
Karloff and Monroe. Wow, okay, that would have been something.
Wouldn't it? But here's the rub. Similar to Tiffany's, but for sort of the opposite reason almost.
How so?
The studio executives just couldn't wrap their heads around it. Marilyn Monroe, as the bride. Her entire image was built on glamour, sex appeal.
And the bride is? Well, not that. She's meant to be unsettling, tragic, maybe monstrous.
Precisely. Their big concern, reportedly, was that audiences wouldn't find Marilyn Monroe abhorrent. They thought people would still see the sex symbol, not the creation.
So her specific brand actually worked against her for this kind of role. They couldn't see past it.
It seems so. The idea of even doing a screen test, putting her in the makeup next to Karloff, just fizzled out.
Was Marilyn actually interested? Or was it just studio talk?
The sources suggest there was some initial discussion, some feelers put out, but the studio's hesitation basically squelched any real momentum it might have had from her side, too. They controlled the contracts, the image.
It really puts the studio system's power into perspective, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Okay, so looking at both these stories, what are the main takeaways for you, for the listeners?
Well, the most obvious thing is this massive clash, right? Between the creator's vision, Capote wanting his Holly, the potential horror revival team seeing something in Marilyn as the bride, and the studio gatekeepers.
Gatekeepers focus squarely on image and audience expectation. It wasn't about stretching an actor or even necessarily out the best fit for the character in an abstract sense, but the best fit for the brand.
And Marilyn's brand was incredibly powerful, but also incredibly confining, it seems. Even at the height of her fame, she couldn't just take any role she or a writer wanted.
No, the studio perception of what Marilyn Monroe meant to the box office often overruled artistic ambition. These weren't just casting choices. They were strategic decisions about managing a valuable asset.
So, two huge what-ifs in film history. Holly Golightly and The Bride of Frankenstein, roles defined by other actresses, roles Marilyn almost had.
And it all circles back to studio control and the power of a predefined image.
Which leaves us with a final thought, something for you listening to consider. Imagine if she had played these parts. How might Holly Golightly be different? Could Marilyn have pulled off The Bride?
And beyond that, how might those roles have changed her career trajectory, her public image, her legacy? What does it tell us about how much the business side, the studio system itself, really shapes what we see on screen and how we remember these stars? Something to think about.